Welcome to Talk Advocacy to Me, the podcast that dives deep into the world of customer advocacy and loyalty. I'm your host, Liz Richardson, and I'm joined by my dynamic co-host, Deena Zenyk. We're the co-founders of Captivate Collective, and we're here to spark your curiosity and fuel your passion for all things customer advocacy. Each episode, we tackle hot and pressing customer engagement topics for the advocurious to the seasoned pro. So let's dive in and talk advocacy. Welcome to another episode of Talk Advocacy to Me. We have an exciting topic that I think a lot of the community is going to be interested in, because why wouldn't they be? How will customer marketers get promoted in 2026? And I know that seems like a big topic, but I'm excited about today's talk because we're going to talk about some very specific ways and tactics and ideas for looking at your position in your organization. And we are going to have that talk with the one and only Sunny Manivannan. Did I say that right, Sunny?
That is very good for someone who we've never talked about this before. So that's excellent. It's Manivannan. It's Manivannan. You are very close.
Manivannan. It was very close. Who is the CEO and founder of Peerbound, which I think many more people are talking about these days in the space. So Peerbound is an AI platform for customer proof and customer marketers at leading SaaS companies all over now. You mentioned a few here, Gong, Motive, Contentful are using Peerbound. So that is fantastic. And prior to founding Peerbound, Sunny, you were the senior vice president and general manager of the global SMB business at Braze. And you've had many other roles, which we're going to talk about a couple of those as well here today as you pull from your own life experience. So, Sunny, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to, is one fun fact about Sunny that nobody knows?
One fun fact
okay,
about
not
me.
that nobody knows, but one fun fact that the community may not know about you, Sunny.
One fun fact is that I spend, if I'm not at work, I am at home with my wife and kids. I don't know if that's fun, but 90% plus of my time that is awake time is in one of those two areas. And I love that. I love the focus. I love what I do at work, and I love being a dad and a husband. And it's that's my main fact. I don't know if it's a fun fact, but that's my main fact.
You're a family man.
Yes.
And as always, Deena, we're excited to have you as part of the conversation as well as we go in, because I know Deena and I have had a lot of conversations about this topic, and we are excited to dig in.
Yeah, great.
Okay. All right, let's do it, guys. So I think a lot of people are not just wondering how they will get promoted in 2026, but maybe even how they will ensure that they keep their job in 2026. So we can hit on both sides of that fence for sure. But if you're a customer marketer, there's a lot of talk around this in the space. How do you get the recognition you feel like you deserve? How do you show the impact of advocacy across the organization? So I want to just start out this conversation with some general principles, right? I mean, because some of this is transferable. No matter what role you are in, there are some common truths for the best way to go about proving your value, showcasing your value, and then even just positioning yourself for those types of conversations at your organization. And Sunny, I know you have a lot of thoughts about this because you have been through this motion. You're a business owner now, but you've been through this motion of getting those promotions in the past. So I just want to start it out with you. What are some of those general principles that you think are the most important?
Sure. Just to give viewers some idea of my background, I've been in software now for the last 12 years, and this is the second company that I founded during that time. But in the middle, I've worked for scale-ups, so companies that scaled from hundreds of employees to thousands of employees. And I've both been, the recipient of promotions as well as the decider and giver of promotions. And to me, regardless of which side of that you sit on, it's actually a pretty straightforward decision. And I think one that customer marketers haven't maybe given that much thought to over the last few years. And now that resources are not what they used to be, 4 years ago, where everybody is swimming in free cash, and AI has completely upended not just this function, but several other functions.
Mm.
I do think it's time. I think it's the right time for a customer marketer to sit down, you know, get a glass of wine, grab a cup of tea, whatever it takes, and let's just really think deeply about what it means to get promoted in 2025, 2026, and beyond. And I want to share with you maybe 3 or 4 characteristics that I think are evergreen characteristics that should lead to a promotion at, a reasonable company. A company doesn't have to be a high flyer. It can be growing moderately, and you should still be able to get a promotion if you can do these things successfully. So to me, number one is taking ownership of real, tangible results, not just things that I did in the last quarter. So one of the things I really love thinking about is, okay, what is the opposite of something? And that helps me illustrate what the point is. So the opposite of taking ownership of results is saying, of real results, is saying, I'm going to deliver 5 case studies this quarter. Now, to a lot of people, that sounds like a result, but when you really, really think deeply about it, okay, you delivered 5 case studies, but how does that help the company? If I'm the CEO and I'm looking at this OKR, am I going to look at this and say, this is a person that's actually a real player in our revenue team at our company? Or am I going to say, oh, okay, 5 case studies. Well, AI can just do that, right? Why do I need a person to do this over a 3-month period when AI can just go write these case studies for free, $20 a month, whatever you want to call it. And so that to me is a effort metric, and maybe there's a tangible, thing that you produce, but that's not a result that the CEO cares about. To me, a result would be something like, hey, I'm going to increase the amount of new revenue that is influenced by customer proof. Just, again, I'm talking about my world. This is the world that I live in, is customer proof. But that is something that people can look at and say, okay, that's not just a single activity. That is a whole bunch of orchestration that, this person is leading. Now, all of a sudden, you're seen as leading a core metric that the CEO cares about. And everybody can look at that, OKR and say, hey, obviously more customer proof points involved in sales is a good thing for us because we have happy customers and we want to showcase that to every prospect. And we think intuitively that is going to increase deal sizes, is going to help us close deals faster, win rates, and so on. Now, making that shift from a effort-based OKR to an outcome-based OKR to me is number one on the list of how do you get promoted. And the immediate objections, right? I can already feel the objections. It's like, well, I don't control how much pipeline is, influenced by customer proof. I don't even know how I'd start measuring that stuff. And, how do I control what sales does? And our sales team never listens to anything that we say anyway, and so on and so forth, and I'm obviously exaggerating here a little bit, but those are the sort of usual objections that you would get. This is not entirely within my control.
Yes, absolutely. And that's so aligned. I think you're speaking our language a lot here, Sunny. Even we just delivered CAP certification courses last week, and Deena does a whole module on really the shift from outputs to impact and how to start measuring that. But I do agree there is a lot of concern, and I think we'll get this when we focus in on customer marketing narrow issues is, so we'll put a pin in it, but that concern of, well, even if I do want to measure that, I don't control. But I think that's the question. Do you not control, or have you not gotten the buy-in to control that system? So we'll put a pin in that to come back to it. Let's keep going down the general list of principles.
Sure. I think, number one was take ownership of real results that a CEO would care about. And I think that is totally accessible to customer marketers. Number two is just raising the standards of not just your own performance, but also helping elevate the others around you. Mm-hmm. And again, we're now, this is the second time we're talking about, hey, do things that are beyond just your own individual sphere of influence. And you have to get comfortable with that discomfort that comes with, well, this colleague, I don't control them. I'm not their boss. How can I make them better? And so on. And I do think that, especially in this post AI world, and by the way, I think all three of us believe that customer marketing will be one of the big winners, which it's early days still, but we've seen all the cuts happen and so on. And now I think we're starting to see a recovery, and I think the future looks way brighter than it ever did before AI, because customer marketers are the owners of customer voice data, and that is incredibly rich and valuable data for not just customer marketing, but also product marketing, sales, customer success, product, a whole bunch of other functions are going to be empowered by this team now. And so now is the time to raise those personal standards and say, okay, I'm simply just going to commit to more. And I'm going to talk about how my work is making everybody else better, and try to find a way to, and we'll talk about OKRs in more detail later, but try to find a way to get credit for that impact that you're making and put that in your OKRs, lead with it. Don't be uncomfortable about, standing up for, a level of performance that perhaps you didn't before, or standing up for a level of support of others and empowering others that you didn't necessarily, do before. And I think in this post AI world that we're in now, all of this is completely accessible to customer marketers. And the bravest ones are already doing it, where they're saying, hey, I am going to commit to, helping the sales team win in these ways. I am going to commit to bringing voice of customer into the entire marketing organization, not just, customer marketing, but the entire marketing organization. Every single campaign, every single piece of collateral that we write is made richer with customer voice, and I'm going to be the one who brings that into the team. And that is going to be recognized very, very quickly by the CMO, and likely even the CRO and the CEO.
Sunny, let's bring this home a little bit. So we talked about, committing to results that go beyond just task completion is basically what we said. Raising those personal standards. So the impact increasing across the organization. Taking ownership, even if you don't fully own that metric, which is a common discussion point in customer marketing that I think we'll dig into a little bit more. So give me an example from real life about how you can, take control of that and turn those general principles into promotions.
Yeah, so let's talk about, if I say, let's take this influence of, let's say I'm going to bring customer voice into the marketing organization as an OKR, and, we will have a goal centered around customer quotes across marketing campaigns and product marketing collateral. And you can say, hey, here's all the collateral that we're creating as a team or campaigns we're driving in this quarter. And my goal is to have a relevant customer quote in every single one of those, pieces of collateral that we output. And I'm going to own that, and I'm going to drive it with these other teams. Now, all of a sudden, you're getting away from, the past, which is where you would say, okay, I'm going to go get 10 quotes approved. And the immediate question used to be, well, where's this stuff going? If you get 10 quotes approved but nobody's using it, does it even matter to the company? And now you're taking that next step and you're saying, well, we already know where it's going. I'm going to go put it in all these other things and make them better. And the way you would do that, you would complete that OKR successfully is, we've had customers do this, is set up a small, some customers have called it a customer love tiger team, customer proof tiger team, whatever you want to call it. But the idea is, you're going to have one person in customer marketing, the customer marketer that, is trying to get promoted. You have a product marketer, and perhaps you have somebody from demand generation and perhaps social media as your, and that's your core four. And you meet, once every couple of weeks, once every month. And, again, I'm talking my book here, but this is a world I know well, is with Peerbound, you are getting customer proof on a regular basis. It's real time. Every time your customers are saying anything positive about you, we're capturing that and bringing it to you. Now, what some of our customers are doing is, every 2 weeks, this meeting is happening, and a product marketer will come in and say, okay, I'm about to, ship this collateral that's vertical specific in this vertical. Well, immediately you can go in and say, okay, what are the best quotes that we have? Well, let me go get this quote approved and let you, have that quote inserted into your, vertical specific collateral that data sheet that you just created. that's the kind of thing that all of a sudden, when that product marketer is sharing their work, they are made better by you. When there's a social media calendar and half of that calendar is now customer quotes, well, that's your impact being felt across the whole company and frankly across the market. When there's demand generation campaigns that are going out to prospects and there's an uplift in that percentage because they're not seeing a quote from a relevant customer, and we all know that we are influenced by our peers, and that uptake is now credit to customer marketing for enabling that to happen. So that is one example of an OKR that I think is achievable by frankly any customer marketer today, is just embedding yourself into the workflow of all these different marketing teams so that you're not just seeing yourself as a siloed team that is half customers, half marketing, but you are just a core sort of, you empower the best work of everybody else around you. I hope that example makes sense.
Yeah, I love that example. We have referred to that as like a customer council, Sunny, in the past. I think one of the keys there is to find people on those other teams who share your drive and vision. Like find people for that council that have the right attributes. So it is kind of a success pod, and who knows, maybe in 2026 the 4 or 6 people in that pod get promoted because you're all lifting each other up by the through the sharing and collaboration.
I think we've naturally kind of just moved the conversation into customer marketing because it's hard to not talk about like specifically what some of those challenges are. So I'm just going to call out the elephant in the room, right? And I think that what is a lot of people are interested in the topic of, okay, I hear you, Sunny. I want to take more ownership. Love these ideas of councils, love the mission statement of getting customer voice into everything. I don't own those metrics, right? Let's be honest. I don't own retention. I don't own pipe. I don't measure those things typically. I want to talk about some real definitive ways that customer marketers can take more ownership. And I think the first one I want to call out is what Sunny already said, which is being brave. If you will not step out and put yourself out there and say, I will accomplish something or hit a metric of some kind because you are so worried that you do not own it, it really keeps you boxed in as far as how the organization views you. So if we will not step out and take ownership of some kind of hard metrics that have to do with bottom line, monetary measurements, I think we will always be that side practice that people see the value, but don't necessarily understand the true bottom line impact. That's on us. Deena, I'm going to hit on one of Deena's peeves here too, because we do hear a lot that it's on the leadership. They just need to understand the impact of advocacy. And if they don't, they just don't get it. Okay, fair. Maybe they need to educate themselves a little bit more. But I think there's a lot of onus on the practitioners who are doing the work, just like in any role, really, if we were talking about any role, it is on you as well to make sure that leadership understands the impact. So let's unpack how can customer marketers showcase that impact to leadership in a way that they understand.
Yeah, it's a great question. Interestingly, I spent a lot of time in product marketing, and both as mid-level product marketer and then product marketing leader at companies that were public companies. And about maybe 7 to 10 years ago, product marketing had a similar challenge that customer marketing faces now, which is that they didn't own any metrics either. You're not the one going out there and selling the software. You're not the one going out there and building the product. And yet somehow that function has come to be seen as extremely critical to every company's go-to-market efforts. And I think it's instructive to understand, okay, what happened there? And what are some of the lessons that we can learn in customer marketing? Because, I've met probably hundreds of product marketers. I've now met hundreds of customer marketers. I can tell you straight face, 100% true. there's no talent gap between these two functions. Okay, there's no intellect or work ethic or integrity gap. There's no challenge on any of those fronts. Customer marketers that I speak to, and you obviously work with this community as well, incredibly hardworking, high integrity, really strategic in a way that I don't think CEOs really understand, how strategic you have to be to even do a good job in this function. So one of the things that I think product marketing did really well is they embedded themselves into the sales workflow really, really nicely. And they identified that there was a need for a glue function between product and sales and the customer / the market at large. And if I look at that pattern, and now, by the way, product marketers are very sought after. Many of the CMO roles that I see out there say you must have a background in product marketing. And it's because this glue function and this idea of somebody who can plug into all these different areas and add value is extremely valuable. And now I look at customer marketers and I say, wait a second, these folks are getting even more primary source data directly from the customer. And they're the glue, they work with the sales team and they work with customer success. And I think to me, when I look at customer marketing, one of the real opportunities here is to start to embed yourself, within sales beyond just the reference program or beyond just throwing case studies over the fence, which, by the way, sales is never going to search. We can go do this for another 10 years if we want to, but they're not, you can put all your stuff in one awesome repository, have the prettiest paint job, and sales will not go there to search. Like, we've now known this for 10 plus years. We can spend another 10 years trying to figure that out, but it's already known. It's not going to work. But when customer marketing, I think starts to think about, okay, let me get in front of every AE, and not just through training sessions that happen once every month or whatever. But again, one of the things that we can now do is, hey, customer marketing, you can have an experience right in Slack where any AE can ask a question and get any answers about customer proof points. You can even send it directly to their email automatically. They don't even have to search. Forget them going to look for information. Information is not going to come to them. And oh, by the way, this, amazing email sponsored by customer marketing. Put your name right at the top of the email. Say, Deena and Liz from your customer marketing team brought you this email. Check it out. You just got off the phone with the prospect and they said they had these objections. Look, we have this amazing customer that actually addressed this objection straight up. And here's the case study. Let me show you the link. It's all fully automatable. It is already happening. And I think that is, okay, yeah, you can have a meeting with the CRO once a quarter, but they're going to forget your name. But, if a CRO hears from their sales reps, oh my God, I'm getting this amazing email, and these proof points not going out every time we send a follow-up email, well, that's going to go to your CMO. And that's how promotions really happen. It's all these back channel conversations between executives about this person is totally helping me win. That is, you're halfway through to a promotion right there.
Deena, I think that's so interesting because what Sunny just said, which that's really interesting. And I do think it's customer marketers tend to be more collaborative in a hand-to-hand way with customer success than they necessarily do with sales. It's almost like, yeah, we create sales material, but then we put it in the repository, or we hand it over to them, or we do a splash that we created the story and then we back off and just let sales do their thing. We're not as embedded as we may be with some of the other departments. And I think that what Sunny is describing sounds a lot that idea of embedding into sales workflows and automation and meeting them where they're at and making it so natural to their day-to-day sounds just like what we talk when we talk about lifecycle advocacy and meeting customers where they're at to build this relationship and to build this interaction.
Totally. I remember undertaking an exercise with one of our clients, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and mapped out the sales process in detail. Just kind of like how you would map out a customer journey, but mapped out the sales process in detail and what happened at these different stages of the sales process, and then layered into that mapping, like what are the types of assets and formats of assets and interactions that would be useful at each of those stages from an advocacy perspective, and then how would we actually measure the impact of that and then like a gaps analysis, a gap analysis. What's actually missing? What do we have that can align with sales, and what don't we have? And what are the processes needed to embed that and stand it up? Yeah, it's so much more than being reactive. I think that customer marketers can be much more proactive in how they really collaborate with sales, not just serve sales, but really collaborate with the folks in the sales org.
Yeah, and I think if we talk about that idea of, taking ownership of a metric, I'm just gonna I'll just throw out some random examples. Nobody fact check or anything, but like, let's say you say, okay, we're not making use of I like what you said, Sunny, our, source data, which is customer feedback. I mean, that is the source data. And we were talking about AI, and we talk about AI a lot at Captivate, even internally. And I think that the pot of gold is the source data. If you have the source data, then you have a really powerful tool with AI. If you don't have the source data and you're going out to AI to create and find and search, you get in all kinds of mess, right? But if you have source data, that is now like the holy grail. So if we are thinking about, okay, how do I then make this into an OKR? Well, it could be that I will infuse source data, but customer voice will somehow influence 50% of the deals closed. All right. But people are going to come back and say, well, how are you going to measure that? How are you going to measure that, Sunny? How am I going to measure that? How can I say a number, and then how can I report on it?
Yeah. By the way, our product now helps you do this.
Nice plug. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, look, I think one of the things you said, Liz, about customer marketing being very collaborative, I think that is such a hallmark of folks who are attracted to this job function and do a good job in this job function, is they're very collaborative. And to me, the flip side of that is in my heart of hearts, wish they were just a little bit more competitive and realized, hey, you're competing for resources internally. And this is, as much as we wish that every company was completely apolitical, there was no wrestling for limited resources. Not everybody gets promoted. And, I think customer marketers have, an opportunity to be a little bit more sort of hard-nosed about, okay, I'm in this team, the marketing team, and I have to fight, for my, time in the sun. I have to make sure that I'm making an impact, and that impact has to be outsized relative to, what everybody else is doing. You asked about, hey, how does a customer marketer measure this? And one of the things that we are helping customer marketers do, and by the way, this is early days, but what we can now do is every time a sales rep is on a call, we can say, hey, this is where they're using customer proof points. And that is a source of truth, because most communication happens on these phone calls. And yeah, there's follow-up emails and so on, we'll get there as well. But we're finally giving customer marketers a way to say, holy cow, we use this stuff on every single call. And I don't think the CEO knows that. I don't think the CMO knows that. And we can give you a beautiful report at the end of every closed won deal that says, here's all the places where customer proof was used. By the way, 1, congratulations. And 2, let's make an OKR out of this. Why don't you say, okay, here's how much you influenced last quarter, and why don't you try to increase that number by 10% in the next quarter? Now, all of a sudden, you're thinking about a completely different set of things. Okay, to increase that number by 10%, I need to get into more deals. Now, let me look at all the places where a rep could have used customer proof if they had something improved. Oh, now you're not starting from, oh, shoot, I got to go get 10 stories. Now you're starting from, what does the sales team need? Okay, now I already know what they need. And then we go get those things from them. Oh, this customer is happy with us. And I know that, again, because we give you a real-time view of how every customer is feeling about you. Okay, now's a good time to go reach out to this customer and get this quote approved, because this has now come up anonymously, in 10 different sales calls. And if I can get this to be public, then that will be a huge win for the sales team. And so one of the nice things that I think AI empowers is, customer marketers have been responsible for the supply of this stuff, right? Supply of case studies, supply of references, supply of, talks, all this stuff. But what AI now enables is for them to actually be the entire market maker, So you understand what is the demand, and you've always been responsible for supply, but now it's a supply that meets demand every single time. So talk about a complete shift in, how much impact you're able to make at a company. If you knew exactly what salespeople needed and you always had the power to go get it, and now you can make that match, it is going to be lights out. And I think that's what I dream of for customer marketing, is the ability for every customer marketer who, we already know, high integrity, works hard, collaborative, all the great things that you want, to now be extremely strategic about how they spend every minute of their time.
Yeah. I would just throw out, because you said, I agree. I think customer marketers are collaborative. I think they have a lot of soft skills. They're having to expand into some more scientific skills, maybe, that we haven't had to in the past, but a lot of heart. I don't actually think customer marketers have been extremely strategic for a long time. I feel like we do tend to, in this practice, be more reactive to the possibilities, or we say, well, we are here to make customers feel and grow that relationship. Yes. But how we do it in the organization has probably not been very strategic. Like you said, what we've been measuring, how we've been promoting ourselves, it hasn't been very strategic. And I think that there is room now to become more strategic, but it is going to stretch those of us in this practice and the way we think about things, even to what Sunny just said, which is, I need to think more about promoting myself, not just my customers, which we do so well. We're so good at promoting our customers. We have to take some of that skill and put it towards ourselves as well. Deena, I see you're nodding. I'm assuming you're trucking with that.
Oh, absolutely. It can, sometimes it isn't necessarily natural for the type of personality that gravitates towards customer advocacy and marketing to become a shameless self-promoter inside the org. But if you don't do it, no one's going to do it for you. And getting the right message to the right person inside your organization in the words that they use and understand is, that's really the key. Without it, you'll be doing good work, but if no one knows you're doing that great work, then.
Yeah. And I feel like, I don't know, Sunny, you tell me what you think. I don't know if we've been risk takers. You feel like we've been risk takers in this practice?
I think a lot of marketers were playing it safe during the ZERP era, and every company's raising money every 6 months, and we're growing the team, we're doubling the team this year. It's like, well, why? I think people, just everybody's just kind of saying, well, if I play it safe, I'm going to get my 10% raise, and our valuation just keeps going up, and there was no need to sort of take any risks. And fast forward to today, if I see another person that used to be a director take on a job as a senior manager, that breaks my heart, because I think these are director level people, at least in my eyes, and when I have conversations with them. And now these are the only jobs that are available, are senior manager jobs. And then that sort of level depression has happened at every level. VPs are now directors, and so on and so forth. And I don't think folks have had to take a risk, but I think now the real risk is actually kind of just doing the same thing you were doing 2 years ago and expecting different results. Mm-hmm. Because it's not like all of a sudden executives are going to wake up one day, have a change of heart, and say, oh yeah, all those jobs I cut, kind of willy-nilly, like, sure, I'm just going to bring those back. And it is a hard road back. It's not an impossible road. And by the way, I think AI is a customer marketer's best friend in many ways, because it connects you directly to impact, or allows you to do that. But it is a road back that requires, I think, some courage. And, as we talked about closer to the beginning, the ability to actually go embed yourselves in things that are not fully in your control, and say, you know what, my job is to increase the revenue of this company. And I'm going to do that by unlocking and amplifying the voices of my happy customers. And I'm going to embed that stuff every single place possible. Here's one. Yes. We're hiring for some people. This is not a plug for our hiring, but in the job description, I got sick of reading all these job descriptions that just say the same exact things. And so one of the things I started doing is at the end of the job description, I just say, here's what customers have said about Peerbound in the last month. And it's just it's anonymous quotes, because we haven't gotten approval for all of them, but it's all the quotes. These are real customers from the last month that we find in Peerbound. And I hope that gives candidates a sense for, okay, this is a product that is loved by customers. And nobody's ever thought about putting customer love in job applications or job descriptions. But, why shouldn't we? I think every candidate is choosing between, am I going to work for a company that's loved by its customers or a company that, doesn't really seem to care about its customers? And, where's the customer marketer that's calling up the HR team and saying, can I get 3 quotes in our job descriptions? And I'll refresh them every month and you don't have to do a single thing. I'll just do that for you. Right there, it's right in front of you. That's right. So that's the kind of risk, would you qualify that as a risk? I would say so.
Because, well, I think it's at least strategic in the sense of like, totally. we are trying to think, we need to be out there thinking of new ways to bring value to the organization. Because like you totally. Said, just doing the same thing over and over, in my opinion, is not going to cut it. And then risky to me is saying I'm taking on a target. I don't know. Many customer marketers are like, I'm taking on a target that has to do with revenue and bottom line, and yes. I will be judged by that. It is risky because you don't own all these processes. You actually have to create all the inroads and the relationships and the processes, and you have to start putting those in place. And it is a much more strategic mindset than, hey, I'm going to get these stories completed or I'm going to launch this customer program. There is a much more specific high level view on what is the impact on the organization. And I think there has been a slight disconnect there in the past. All right, we are totally running out of time, but I want to get to some really, really practical things, which is I just want to get to some of the tactics for asking for a promotion. And Sunny, I know you put a little bit of thought into this, so let's run through a few bullet points and give them some news they can use.
Sure. I think, look, promotions in many ways are a delicate dance between asking and just, having it be granted just because you're so indispensable. And let me talk about the being indispensable part very quickly, and then I'll talk about how do you actually make the ask. And what does that even look like? And what does that look like for me on both sides of that, of that coin? I think on the making yourself indispensable, we've covered it. It's embed yourself in every single part of the organization. If all of a sudden, there's department heads meetings and they're saying your name, if the chief people officer is like, oh, we have these amazing customer quotes in our job descriptions now, and candidates are, saying how creative that is. Well, that's going to come. Well, who did that? Oh, this person. Okay, right. Got it. So those conversations need to happen. And I think, that's part of making yourself indispensable. And you're not asking for anything explicitly there. You're just doing things that are strategic, that are smart, both for the company and for your personal career. Mm-hmm. And by the way, customer marketers, it's not evil to think about your own career. It's okay, I think, to, be a little bit focused on what matters to you. And, it's not all about your customers and your colleagues and empowering everybody else. It's also okay to think about, what matters to you and how do you sort of grow yourself as a person and achieve your potential. So that's the indispensable part. I think in terms of making the ask, my 3 things are, it's never going to happen on the first cycle. So plan a couple of cycles ahead and start talking about, hey, and it shouldn't be, I want a promotion, so here's what I'm going to do. It should be, I want to grow as a professional and I see these needs at this company. Here's all the stuff that we already have. Here's the hundreds of G2 reviews. Here's our, dozens of case studies. Here's all these beautiful advocates who've been shouting our praises from the rooftops. Here's all the ways that we could use this stuff already today to make this company better. And I see an opportunity to build a really comprehensive program. I would like to go do it. Do I have your support? So it actually begins with you committing to something first and not saying, I want a promotion. Will I get a promotion if I do all these things? And then you're trying to hold your manager's feet to the fire. That never works. That's never worked in the history of promotions. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people think it works because they get advice that you got to be more aggressive and things like that. Mm-hmm. And the way you're aggressive is now you go out and build this program and it's been 6 months and you've done all these things. And you say, hey, here's where we were 6 months ago. Here's where we are now. And include some positive praise from your colleagues about, all these things that are done. What these things have done for them in terms of making them more effective and making them more successful, and never hurts to have allies internally. And then you make the ask, this is right now a manager role or a senior manager role, and it's scoped as such. are you okay if I put together a plan for what, a director level person would do in this role? And can we talk about that? Because, as a part of my growth, I think there's an opportunity here, at this company and where we are today to have a direct level person doing this. And I would like to try to step into that role with your support.
I think what I'm hearing is there's the look back and the look forward, and in the sense of you need to have both of those if you're coming to ask for promotion. You need to have the proof from the back end of this was my mandate, this is what I've accomplished, and not only accomplished, but here's where I've gone beyond that. I have proven that I can think beyond that. And then here is my vision of what the impact could be to the organization. It's almost like when you're pitching anything to any organization. When Sunny, you're selling software. You're not selling software. You're selling software on the sense of this is how it will benefit the organization. So therefore, when I'm coming forward and saying, hey, I want this promotion, I feel like not just that I've done a great job in the role that I am doing, which is your job, but here is why I want to move beyond that role. And this is why it's going to be good for both of us. We talk about mutual benefit all the time in advocacy. You need to have that mutual benefit explained to your boss as well. That is what's going to motivate. You got to think about what motivates your boss too. Is your boss also needs to provide mutual benefit to the organization. Your boss also wants to progress, or they want to see the company succeed, or whatever it is. Your narrative needs to include the success of the company and how you're being given more responsibility, being given more leeway to make that happen is a win for both the organization and the company, not just, hey, I've been here a while, I'm doing my job, please give me more. Deena, I know this, we've talked about this.
Absolutely. I agree with all of that. Another just practical and actionable idea for our listeners in making your way up that ladder is to kind of hone in on what that next step is for you and research the job descriptions are out there now. You can take those job descriptions, put them into AI and get some sort of a kind of collated version of that next step job description, and then start to map how what you plan to do can map into what that role is. I'm a fan of taking that kind of the mental lift off of whoever your boss is. Do the work for them. Show them that, hey, the next step in this career path is, A or B, and here's typically what that remit is about, and here's how I'm, scratching into that already, and here's what I plan to do to take steps towards that role.
So spot on.
Yeah, great tips. As we wrap here, Sunny, I'm like, ooh, did we talk about this spicy little nugget that came up in our pre-conversation?
Let's do it.
Let's throw it out there. Let's throw it out there
if we need to.
Yeah, okay. So
it would be so great if we just ended there.
Like, oh my gosh, yeah. We're cliffhanger.
We're done.
There are a lot of expectations around salary in this space. We've noticed. Yeah. And I kind of hinted that a little to Sunny. He's like, oh my gosh. And we realized like, oh, okay. Could it be, this is a touchy subject. So and I know, like you're saying, if we are strategic, if you are owning those numbers, if you are showing the impact on every single deal, like if you're doing that, then yes, you should get rewarded for how strategic you are, how indispensable. I love that word, Sunny. Are you indispensable? Like, just be honest with yourself. Is the work you're doing indispensable? Could someone else step in? Could a contractor step in? Could an agency step in and do this? Be really honest with yourself, but then also, be realistic, I think is what we were talking about there, about how much this role will be worth to a leader at this time. And that was the conversation we had, because it did seem like maybe the expectations of how much you should be getting paid are keeping some people from stepping into good roles and good opportunities, instead of going in there and then showcasing the indispensability of what they are doing. I feel so nervous just laying that out there. What do you guys think?
Oh, I mean, I'm totally with you. I think there's kind of like a in customer marketing and advocacy, there's pre-COVID more realistic expectations of salaries in the field, and then during COVID, I mean, it was party time for customer marketing, and we just saw the salaries just inflate incredibly during that time. And I think that some of them are just coming back down to earth a little bit and are in line with the value that you're driving, and for the size of the business. But the more that you can show that you can really move the needle for the business, and let's face it, customer marketers, like, your primary objective for like anyone that works anywhere is to help the company make more money. So if you can prove that out, then yeah, maybe your piece of the pie is a little bit bigger in your salary. Sunny, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, both of you are pretty spot on. I don't think this current salary sort of mini depression is permanent. I do think that we're looking at a brighter future, but there's a big if there, which is that, everybody's going to have to make more happen with fewer resources. The days of 5 to 6 person teams as standard practice for, 1,000 person company, I think those days are gone. 5 to 6 person customer marketing team, I think those days are not coming back. But, that 2 person team could have 10 times the impact that 5 person team did even 3 years ago. And I think when you can make yourself that sort of strategic nerve center within your company and within your revenue team, and you've got every salesperson, getting that "Listen, Deena" sponsored email every time they get off a call, and you've got your HR team singing your praises because now all of a sudden customer proof points are in your job descriptions, and that's a differentiator. And you can go, maybe every function except legal and finance, but every other function you can go one by one and say, how can I make them better, and how can I make them recognize the impact that I'm having on this company? And now all of a sudden, all these folks at the highest levels of the company know your name, they see your work. And that's when raise conversations become much easier. And, it's not that nobody else can do that, but it's like, why would a CMO want to let go of somebody that's getting so much praise from so many people at the company? And it's clearly, out of just good work that's happening, and you're using AI. You're not just, wasting time doing something that can be had for $20 a month, using ChatGPT Pro. You're doing all the things that, you should be doing from an efficiency perspective. You want to keep that person, you want to promote that person, and you want to give that person a big raise. And I think that is what the next 2 to 3 years can bring if you're the right type of marketer.
Yeah. All right. So to sum it up, take risks. We gotta take a bit more risks. We gotta own metrics. We've got to put our stamp on it and say what we will be able to accomplish. In order to do that, we do have to think more strategically about how we are the holders of the source material that can not just close deals, but can really influence many different fields across the organization, and how we embed ourselves across different teams' journeys, like Sunny said, and have an outsized impact. I think that's such good advice. Have an outsized impact. And then also we have to take ownership of proving that value or showcasing that value, not just of what we've been able to accomplish, but then also showcasing what we could do with more resourcing, with more responsibility, with a higher degree of power at the organization, a bigger seat at the table. But be realistic too about where the organization is, what is really being driven by you to increase the bottom line, which is loyalty and sales, right? At the end of the day. So that's a meaty discussion, and this is probably one of the longer discussions that we've ever had on this show. But I think it's really interesting. That's a lot coming at us. We are going through some major shifts. So I think from a tech perspective, AI is turning everything on its head for sure. But then customer marketing as a practice is having to go through a major shift in how we view ourselves and our role at the organization. How we actually execute and function is going through a major shift. And so we're having both of these things happen at the same time. And it is a lot to take in. And then there's all these tools that are coming out that you feel like you have to understand and understand how they play as well, such as Peerbound with Sunny. So we get it. There's a lot going on, but like Sunny said, there will be ones who win, and it is the ones who understand how to tell that story, how to harness what is new in a good way, how to make use of that, and then how to tell that story. And that has always been what the best customer marketers were, which was storytellers. I mean, that is at the heart of everything that we do. And so thank you guys. I think that's a lot to unpack. Hopefully they got some good nuggets. Hopefully you listeners got some good nuggets for how you should be thinking about yourself and presenting yourself to your boss, but not even just to your boss, to the whole entire organization, and building that reputation of being indispensable. I think that's my, I would say that to anybody in any role. Are you indispensable? Make yourself indispensable.
Yeah, good chat.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Sunny, so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Liz and Deena, and talk soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.